All right, we will call this meeting to order, the June 1st, 2020 workshop for Plymouth Township Council. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
So again, thank everybody for your patience. This is our what, third month doing it this way, I think. Our third month.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes, Karen.
I have no video. I'm in a safe driving mode
Oh,
and I can't get on through my laptop. I'm on my phone.
well, we can hear you very clearly.
Yeah.
Are you okay with
How
that?
do I get rid of safe driving mode? I'm not in a car.
I just asked you to add video. There you go.
Good.
Oh, there you go, Karen.
I have no video.
We see
Got it
you
now. I
now.
just gave it to you.
I
Yeah.
can't see anybody.
We see you and we hear you.
Oh,
just-
now I hear you. My laptop's not working. Anyway, I'm sorry. I've been here since 1:15 trying to get on.
Can you hear us?
Not really, a little bit.
I can't see
Okay,
Karen.
carry on. Sorry.
We'll get it to work. So again, just, this maybe hopefully we're coming down to getting close to being able to meet in person again. But again, just thank everybody, and Brandon Strong and Len for all their work setting these up. So again, just getting to be a little more routine every time we do it. So tonight we have two presentations, and our first one is from Hanover Properties regarding the possible redevelopment of parts of the Plymouth Meeting Mall. And I believe Denise Yarnoff is here to present to us tonight. Is that correct?
I don't see
I
Denise,
hear-
but Dan, oh, you hear
I
Denise?
saw her.
So if I just say before,
Second page.
She's muted.
But Dan can,
Yes, I am here, and Denise, I believe, is here as well. And Chris, it sounded like you wanted to say something to start us off, so I'll toss it back to you. Sure.
thank you, I appreciate it. So if I could just real quick before we hand it over to you, just to catch everybody up to speed. I think we've had a lot of informal conversations over the last few years, some formal conversations over the last few years, particularly about the portion of the mall property where the IKEA building used to be, across from Whole Foods. As recent as a couple years ago, I think there was a presentation for an extended stay facility there at one point, and then this discussion of possible residential development has been brought up, and essentially that would go against the current zoning, so we would have to make some text amendment or some zoning changes to the property. As speaking on, I think, behalf of most of council, I believe we're all in a position where we really have not decided yet what we're comfortable with there, but we certainly want to give Preet and Hanover Properties a chance to present to us and share a little bit about, hopefully not only what they want to do, but what some of the trends are and why some malls are going in this direction. So I know there are probably some people from the general public that are watching tonight. And again, we remind you that we do have time for questions at our regular meeting next week, but there will be no public questions tonight. But we really certainly encourage those who are watching to reach out to us over the next few days and share any of your thoughts about anything that you see or hear tonight. So with that, I will hand it over to you guys.
Good evening. I'm Denise Yarnoff on behalf of Hanover. We have two parts to our presentation. Preet is also involved in the meeting, and they would like to make some initial comments about the mall and about the future of the mall and issues that have been raised to them. And then Dan Gordon, who you heard speak a few minutes ago, will then present about the Hanover project itself.
Thank
I'll
you.
turn it over to Dan.
This is Mark Kaplan. Rob Lewis and I represent Preet. I think that the easiest way to do that is for us to have the senior executive officer in charge of development, Dan Herman, give you the background of what's going on in the mall business and what we're trying to do from an overall point of view with regard to the Plymouth Meeting Mall. So Dan, why don't you take it from there?
Sure, Mark. Thank you. And Chris, thank you for the opportunity this evening to speak to the town council, the administration, and other residents of the township. Preet has undertaken a lot of redevelopment on the mall over the years and believed it was important in our portfolio as a good piece of real estate to continue to reinvest in the portfolio, and specifically this property, in attempts to keep it as current as possible, providing the residents with what your wallets are telling us you would like there. And understand in the mall business today that the days of having department stores waiting in the wings to take over old department stores just doesn't exist in many, many markets. Unless you're the dominant mall in the market, it's highly improbable you would attract another department store to take over. And over the years, you've seen what Preet has done in efforts to remake Plymouth Meeting Mall. And as a backdrop, if you kind of look at the overall region today, with King of Prussia being such a dominant regional retail environment, and then Willow Grove to the east being another fairly dominant regional environment, it kind of puts Plymouth from a regional mall perspective kind of in between the two. And you probably wouldn't build a mall there today. And you could also potentially argue back when it was built, had there been more cooperation between the department stores, the department store families, the developers, you may have only built one mall to begin with and had it a 4-acre or 5-acre mall and not splitting the pie, if you will. But we find ourselves here today that Preet owns the mall. Preet has continued to believe in the real estate and reinvesting its capital into it. With the redevelopment of the IKEA 10 or 11 years ago, which was significant dollars out of pocket to tear it down and then build a whole wing that includes the Whole Foods, which has proven to be extremely successful today. Back around the same time as when we embarked on adding a number of restaurants to the property, including P.F. Chang and Redstone Grill, all which continue to do extremely well and are supported very, very well by the community. And most recently, with the opportunity to take the former Macy's department store and remake it, not having a department store that was interested in coming into the property, we felt there was opportunities to add retailers that were not in the marketplace. Some were relocation, obviously, as you well know, but provide them with their current modern platform and also helping to energize the mall and hopefully drive additional traffic in the mall, additional sales, continue to solidify our investment in the real estate and in the community, and also increase, provide tax base to the community as well as jobs. And so we undertook that redevelopment and added Burlington stores. We added Dick's Sporting Good, added a Michael's store, Edge Fitness, Miller's Ale House, and various other smaller retails. And as we were doing that, as many of you know over the years, we believe that adding multifamily to the regional mall platform is the way to go. I would like to think we're unique and it was our original idea, but if you go back in time over the past 5 to 10 years, it's actually been happening across the country. The whole concept of mixing uses, whether on a single plane or a mixed use where it's a vertical mixing of uses, has taken off over the past 10 to 15 years, predominantly with quote unquote lifestyle centers, and then has morphed into the mall platform as we continue to find ways to drive foot traffic and disposable income to shop at the mall. And so, we've been interested over the years and have been back and forth with some preliminary conversations. We find ourselves today at the crossroads of a great opportunity with Hanover Development, a great multifamily developer, and I'll let them share their story with you in a moment, that wants to be part of this overall platform. We've just finished investing millions of dollars in the redevelopment of the Macy's. We've seen the success of the Whole Foods. We've added Legoland to the property. We've added medical office to the property, which we wish was still open and operating, but because of their own internal issues going on with the operational side of it and the ownership of it, caused them to close. But we believe it still has a place within the property. And continuing to look to the future of what else could be done with the mall, we're kicking around other ideas, what to do with the balance of the real estate. We believe some of the smaller inline retail inside the mall will continue to be successful. We also believe there is a lot of that space that we need to be rethinking about how it's going to continue going forward, either in the right retail platform at the mall or in a platform that is complementary to the mall itself and the overall real estate in the community, which may include larger format retail. It may include additional office. It may include various uses. We've not figured out all the answers, but we have a number of plans we're working on right now. We've gone to market with our leasing team, and unfortunately, you know, COVID-19 has kind of put a stop on everything in this country, and therefore all those conversations have come to a grinding halt. And we're hopeful by the end of the summer, things will pick back up again. We can start entertaining those conversations and keeping those ideas moving forward. You know, along with that, we are looking at the connectivity between the Whole Foods and the Miller's Ale House, the new wing, if you will, and realizing the original plaza we envisioned there has not played itself out to the best of its ability. And we think it's time to go back and relook at it and think of other ways to continue energizing it. And so as we embarked on adding multifamily to the overall property, we started looking at how do you do that, where do you do it, and how do you capitalize on the synergies between the uses and bringing the new consumers to the property. And felt that the plan you're going to see later in this presentation offers an opportunity to place it appropriately on the property overall, but also so that it interacts with the existing platform and helps drive traffic at Whole Foods, at the restaurants, and hopefully within the mall itself. And we're also further looking at those plans right now for that plaza area. What do we do? How do we do it to help energize that and create some activity, areas of interest, and drawing people's attention, not only for the exterior, but also leading them to a door that seems to be forgotten as an entrance to the mall itself. And as you think about the pedestrian way, which you'll see in a moment, of engaging with the consumers who are going to be in that area, to also identify the walkability from there up to the other restaurants on the north portion of the property without having to get in their cars and drive around, and being part of a walkable overall environment. And part of the challenge is on us to make sure that we continue to enhance that experience, to make it inviting for us as consumers, but also in conjunction with the product that Hanover is proposing to develop on the property. And so I leave you with those thoughts and happy to answer other questions. This is not the only mall that we're doing this at. It's one of probably 7 or 8 that we personally are doing it at. But we can cite example after example with every other mall developer in the country where they've identified opportunities to incorporate multifamily, lodging, and other non-traditional mall uses into the mall platform, whether it's next to it and creating the connectivity or actually physically attaching it to it in various configurations. And so I leave you with those thoughts and comments that this is very important for PREIT. We believe it's very important for the viability for the long term of this property and to continue remaining relevant to you as a residents of Plymouth Township and the customers. And with that, Mark, I'll give it back to you and let you see if there's anything further you want to add before we ask the Hanover folks to step in.
There are other things that I could say, but I think you hit the 50,000 foot view on the whole thing. I guess the most important other thing that I can say or emphasize what Dan said is that the Hanover development is but a part of the development. I just want to, Chris, I hope that over time we will be able to make you comfortable that PREIT's here for the long haul, that the idea is not to just sell off some real estate to Hanover, and that the Hanover development is unrelated to the better being of the township. I think that Dan hit that. I think that at least intuitively, it is clear that if we bring in 300 to 400 apartments, as Hanover will describe, at the somewhat higher end of the market, it will be synergistic with the rest of the mall. You know that we do not control the office building. It's right in the middle, but we do control the rest of the property. We have all of the entrances on Hickory that I know personally because I drive there every day between my house in White Marsh and my office in Bluebell, that there is unused capacity there, and there has to be some rethinking to other parts of the mall, as you have suggested. And all I'm trying to say is I'm involved in trying to help Dan in 4 malls to do the same thing. Make the malls, Exton Mall, the Willow Grove Mall, Moorestown Mall, and this mall relevant and viable. What Dan did not say, and I'm really carrying on too long, is that years ago, Preet sold off a number of other properties and other malls that they didn't think could make it, and they concentrated on the malls that they thought could make it because of the great location of the real estate. So Denise, I leave it up to you and Dan Gordon to introduce your thoughts. And I know from our discussions, they will tie into the, let's call it the synergy of the mall.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just going to turn it right over to Dan Gordon from Hanover, who will, I believe, take over the screen and present the materials.
Hi, everybody. Dan Gordon with the Hanover Company. Karen, is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm before I jumped ahead and did that. Okay, so everybody, I am Dan Gordon. I'm with the Hanover Company. I'm a developer on the ground in the Mid-Atlantic. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening, and thank you for taking the time and allowing us to present our concept for some residential apartments at the Plymouth Meeting Mall. I think I've had the pleasure of meeting some of you in person in these times. I guess in a certain sense that's somewhat rare, but I hope to meet the rest of you in person sometime in the near future as we work to execute on this project and move it forward. I'd like to take a moment just to introduce the team that we have with us tonight. There are a couple of partners from the Hanover organization who've joined us, Adam Harbin and Stephen Luna, who may chime in at some point. We also have Chris Williams from McMahon, who will be speaking briefly to some traffic issues, as well as Cornelius Brown from Bowler Engineering, who might comment on some civil issues and always helps us set the course. And finally, we have Denise from RRHC. Hanover is a multifamily development organization based in Houston, Texas. Our founders like to say that we're an inch wide and a mile deep. All we do is build ground up apartment buildings. We don't renovate old buildings. We don't do anything other than apartments. Our average deal is usually in the 350 to 400 unit range, and we are building projects across the country. We have right now a pipeline that's between $5 and $7 billion at various stages of development. And as I noted, we operate in most of the major metros around the country, with the exception possibly of New York and a few other cities, but most of the big cities, we're in them. What really sets Hanover apart from a lot of our competitors is our vertically integrated structure. So we're our own contractor. We are also our own we're also our own landscape architect and our own interior architect. In addition to that, we have development partners who are deal focused, and we also have development partners and other developers who actually have architecture backgrounds. That's resulted in a very consistent set of details and ways of executing on residential projects that we've extended across the country. And that integration allows us to achieve a level of quality control that, frankly, most of our competitors just can't. If you were to look at what we build, roughly 30% of what we build is high-rise buildings. Something in the neighborhood of 60% is mid-rise residential buildings, and then maybe 10% is surface park buildings. That's constantly varying, but it just gives you a general sense of what we're doing across the country. In the Mid-Atlantic, the vast majority of what we're doing are mid-rise residential buildings that vary between 5 and 7 stories of predominantly wood frame construction, occasionally with podiums at the base. When you think about what Hanover builds, I think people get confused sometimes because when they walk into the projects of many of our competitors, they think, well, this is focused at...
Dan, I'm sorry, it's Mark. The screen is green. It's just, I don't think that you've got up what you thought you have up.
That's quite odd. Can nobody see a title slide?
We saw the title slide and then it went green. The title
Yeah.
slide behind it, you can see.
Can you see Hanover introduction now?
Yes.
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 Got it. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. I think when I clicked on another program, it must have stopped me from sharing for some reason. So as I'm talking about Hanover, the intention was to be paging through a few images of some of our projects in the Mid-Atlantic. King of Prussia is in King of Prussia at the Valley Forge Shopping Center. Valley Forge is our first phase. King of Prussia was actually our second phase. Here's one of our mid-rise projects at Hanover Cross Street in Baltimore, Maryland. And this is a rendering of the project that we have under construction at a Preet Mall in Exton, actually across a mall access road from a Whole Foods. A little bit of a coincidence there. Hanover works to, and this is what I was getting to before, achieve a classic luxury feel. Unlike many of our competitors who target millennials and have a very specific demographic that they're chasing, the goal with Hanover projects is that anybody could walk in and feel comfortable renting any of our units and feel comfortable in our interior and exterior amenities. We're particularly proud of our exterior amenities. Having an in-house landscape group and frankly just spending more money usually gives our projects a generally more luxurious feel. Unless there are any questions about Hanover as an organization, what I'd love to do is jump into the site and start discussing what we've got laid out particularly for this project. So everybody's familiar with the mall. I wanted to grab a couple of site views that frankly don't really do the mall justice, but which give you a general sense of where the site fits within the mall. The site is the old IKEA office building just below the Whole Foods. And one thing that you may note as you look at the Whole Foods is the Whole Foods is actually dramatically higher than the IKEA office building. In fact, the entry to the garage below the Whole Foods is 10 feet below the surface parking lot in front of the Whole Foods, and the IKEA office building is actually another 10 feet below that. So when you think about the height of a building that is nestled in this corner between I-276 and 476, you are actually in a sunken corner of the mall, and any building that you build here is going to feel a lot smaller than what you end up building. This gives you a sense of really the juncture of the mall. You're not going to see this building really from township roads. You're going to see it from the highways, and it's certainly not going to loom over anything. In fact, quite the opposite, is you can sort of see Whole Foods kind of looms over the building. Here's a slightly more close-in view of that. It's tough to represent in 2D what exists in 3D, but if you think about the office building as being set 20 feet below this Whole Foods parking lot in front, that's a pretty accurate way to think about it. By the way, it looks like there's a truck that got lost on top of the Whole Foods there, so somebody should go find that at some point. So When we started talking to Preet about the Plymouth Meeting Mall, we were incredibly excited. We were really excited for a few reasons. The first reason, obviously, is that Plymouth Meeting is an incredible township. It's a really special place, great people, and it's a beautiful environment. We also got very excited about being on this mall, and there are good reasons for that. So Preet wanted to talk about a 6-acre site adjacent to a Whole Foods, essentially adjacent to a movie theater, walkable from many restaurants, walkable from all of the amenities that the mall has to offer, the gym. I mean, the list is really endless. It's a great mall with many of the everyday amenities that you would want residents to have. And what's wonderful about that is that people who live in mid-rise buildings like this don't really want to drive places and add traffic to the local community. What they really want to do is walk places and essentially become consumers at retail that is reachable the old school way, on 2 feet. We've laid out here a 5-story building wrapping a 5-story garage. We're still figuring out the grades, which is what I just talked about. So I can't tell you if it's all yet on 1 grade or if it's actually going to be split. And there will be 5 stories next to 5 stories that are set down slightly. But what I can tell you is that we were very focused on wrapping the garage. We wanted a structured parking garage here, which provides a more luxurious feel and a safer feel than a surface parking lot. What you do is you drive into the garage, you drive up, you get out and park on your floor, and you walk right into the building. It's a controlled access environment. It feels great. So often when you do a structured parking garage, other developers will end up leaving part of the garage exposed, which I think does a disservice to the township as a general matter, because everybody's staring at the side of a parking garage. In our case, and it's a little hard to see in the yellow, what we've done is we've wrapped the entirety of the garage with units, which means that you just have a fully architecturalized building, for lack of a better term. You'll note that we also have 2 large courtyards, including 1 pool courtyard that has a grove of trees, similar to what we did in Hanover Valley Forge and other concepts that we've done. And you'll also see that there is green space around the building. It is more dense than some of the other projects in the township, but there is, between the courtyards and the fire lane, which we hope, we haven't spoken yet with the local fire marshal, but which we hope to do out of Grasscrete, there should be a nice landscaped feel all the way around the property. I mentioned it at the beginning, I'll mention it again. You walk to Whole Foods, you walk to get your groceries. You can see Whole Foods labeled at the top of the concept, you can see a crosswalk. We need to spend more time with Preet figuring out exactly how that connection is going to work. But that connection is the key to the whole development. It's what makes this site so special. That ability to just walk right outside and do almost anything you're going to do throughout the day other than going to work. The next slide is a concept plan. It just drills down a little bit. To the degree that the colors on the prior page weren't so helpful, this gives you a better sense of where the garage is, how it fits into the building, where the courtyards are, and it also references the size of the building. So we're looking at roughly 390 units and roughly 500 parking spaces. I will note that the lot is a little bit oddly shaped, which contributed to the less traditional structure of the building. But I am excited about the nooks and crannies as we've managed to fit a pretty sizable courtyard, 60 feet by 140 feet into one of them. I thought it made sense to go through just in a little bit of detail some of the benefits to the township associated with a development like this. You guys have probably all thought about them before. The first is obviously synergies with the mall. I think Mark actually used that word, synergies. I think it's a great one. Retail has a symbiotic relationship with apartments and condos and homes. The more people you have living proximate to retail, using it on a daily basis, the better the retail does. And not only that, the more excited the residents are to be living there. So if you put a whole bunch of apartments right here at this end of the mall, frankly, it's just going to make the whole mall healthier. And having that retail, having that intensity of retail, I think is a benefit for the entirety of the township, particularly in a time when look, it's no secret that retail is struggling, and it's also no secret that, particularly in the midst of the pandemic, retail is probably the most, if not one of the most, if not the most challenged real estate asset class. So I now have up some of the township revenue associated with a development of this nature. This is based on our review of the township code and a bunch of assumptions, but I think it's helpful to just understand what the impact will be on the town's budget. You can see roughly $1.6 million in one-time fees associated with upfront development. That's based on some sewer assumptions that we need to get into over time. And you can see a traffic fee. You can also see a $400,000 residential facilities fee. I'm sure the list goes on, but these are the key ones that we wanted to pull out. You can also see annual property taxes as well as the business privilege tax. Obviously, there's a huge annual contribution to the school district. We think that's going to be in the neighborhood of $840,000 once the project is stabilized on an annual basis. For the municipality, there's both an $80,000 tax as well as an annual business privilege tax, which, while smaller, is still substantial, obviously, and results in a total probably of about $100,000 a year that can be used presumably by the township in a discretionary manner.
Dan, I have a question for you. Can you go back that screen?
Sure.
You have 391 units projected, and you only have 74 peak hour trips. Am I looking at that right?
You are, and the reason for that, and Chris Williams is going to be in a better position to discuss it, is because once you exclude internal mall traffic and the fact that people are shopping in the mall and in the grocery store and they're walking to the movie theater, you end up with dramatically less trips. And so you also have, factoring into that, I believe, the fact that the IKEA building had been developed with a whole bunch of trips and has trips already associated with it. And so I believe those may be subtracted out as well. Chris is on the call and he'll be in a better position to detail that. And again, this isn't something that we've had the opportunity to discuss with you guys in detail yet, as this is sort of the opening presentation, but to the degree we need to adjust that, it's certainly something we can discuss.
Can I ask if the sewer connection was based on an alternate? Because otherwise it would be 1 for 1 unit.
Yeah, it was based on an alternate. So we have 2 projects operating at King of Prussia and a lot of data that shows that we use 100 gallons per day. And I believe that the township ordinance specifies that it's 230 gallons per day is equal to 1 EDU, but in the event that you can show that that usage is inappropriate, you'll use a substitute. Karen, as you know, we did want to discuss that fee with you, and we still do want to use that with you, but sorry, it's 100 gallons per day per unit, per unit per day.
I just wanted to make sure you knew. I assumed it was based on the alternate, but, and yes, the code allows for that if you can provide the data.
Yeah, Karen, it's Mark. These are Hanover's numbers that we will have to review with Hanover. I know that ordinance because we were involved in it years ago, but these are Hanover's numbers, and since they play into the overall effect of an apartment development on the mall property, we would like to review them and weigh in on them with the township. So I'm sorry I might have missed this, but I hadn't seen these numbers before. So go ahead, Dan, please go forward with your presentation.
Thanks, Mark. Karen, to answer the question, we have a lot of data on what the sewer fee should look like, and we know what the ordinance provides for, and we look forward to having that conversation. And as I was saying, it is a conversation we're excited to have with you in the near future. And to the degree we need to go through the data, we're excited to do it. So we look forward to having the conversation with the township soon. Let's move forward, unless there are any other questions on this slide. Cool. So we know that the township has some issues that are of particular concern and importance, and what we wanted to do was just call those out. One of the good things is that we have already been put in a position where we were able to do a traffic study, and so we have a little bit of data from that we'd like to share, which may help alleviate one of the most traditional concerns associated with any real estate development, really, of any type. So we'll start with traffic, and then we'll work from traffic into the impact of the development on the local schools, and finally, how we think about the size of the development in the context of the town. So with that, Chris Williams, can you jump in?
I can jump in. There we go. Do you want to operate the slides while I talk, or I'm not sure how I can do that.
Just tell me when to flip slides and I'll do it.
Okay, very good. All right, so my name's Chris Williams with McMahon. At this point, McMahon has prepared a traffic study. It has not yet been finalized or submitted to the township. The traffic study evaluates traffic conditions at the Plymouth Meeting Mall, at the access drives, and at surrounding intersections during the weekday morning, weekday afternoon, peak hours, and the Saturday peak hour. So what's on this slide before you is an estimate of the trip generation. So let's start with a discussion of traffic generated by the apartments. So the trip generation estimates for the apartments, it's based on data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers for other similar land uses, which I'm sure this board is very familiar with. As highlighted in green, for the purposes of this traffic study, the proposed apartments are estimated to generate 128 trips during the weekday morning peak hour, 131 trips during the weekday afternoon peak hour, and 137 trips during the Saturday peak hour. But to address the comment or the question that was raised earlier, the proposed apartments will replace a former office building, which is currently vacant, but which could be improved and it could theoretically be reoccupied. As such, as highlighted in orange, according to ITE data, the existing 61,000 square foot office building could generate 78 trips during the morning peak hour, 57 trips during the weekday afternoon peak hour, and 26 trips on Saturday. So by comparison, the incremental increase or the delta between the office and the apartments would indicate that there's an added increase in traffic of 50 trips in the morning, 74 trips in the weekday afternoon peak hour, and 111 more trips during the Saturday peak hour. So that specifically addresses the question that was raised earlier with regard to how the number that was calculated to arrive at the traffic impact fee. I would also offer that there is a real value and benefit in locating residential on this site, and some of this has been touched on. But adding a residential use increases the diversity and the mix of uses on the property. The proposed redevelopment of the apartments will further add to this mix of diverse land uses on site, which will promote traffic internalization within the mall property. It will allow the overall mall site to thrive while lessening the traditional traffic impacts of a pure retail project. Now, what I will say is the numbers on this chart also assume some internalization, whereby there's a capture between the mall property and the residential. And for the purposes of our traffic study, we've assumed a cap of 20%. However, in reality, given the mix of uses on the site with retail, movie theater, restaurants, entertainment, the Whole Foods, there's likely to be an even greater reduction in traffic from the apartments due to the mix of uses on site and the internalization that may occur. But what you see before you is what we've assumed for planning purposes in the traffic study. Dan, you want to go to the next slide? Oh, I think we see a green screen. There we go. So I want to provide you with some context with a look at the traffic generated by the mall over the years. So our office has been conducting traffic counts and studies at the Plymouth Meeting Mall for many years. So to put this all in perspective, as shown in the first row, in the Plymouth Meeting Mall in 2007 was generating 931 total trips in the morning, 2,283 in the afternoon peak hour, and 2,975 trips in the Saturday peak hour. Now in 2020, new counts were conducted. Now these were conducted earlier in the year. They were conducted in February prior to the pandemic and the statewide shutdown. And as you can see, in 2020, the mall property was generating 664 trips in the morning, 1,801 trips in the afternoon, and 2,519 trips on Saturday during the peak hours. Now the third row, titled Planned Restaurant Outparcel Traffic, there are two approved restaurant outparcels scheduled for completion, and these are projected to add more trips to the mall property, as shown here, 55, 77, and 214. Then if we layer in the additional traffic from the apartments, 130, 164, and 171, if we were to add those two rows to the 2020 counts, we would arrive at the row titled 2023 projected mall traffic. And by 2023, with the build out of the mall, with the apartments and the two restaurant outparcels, the site will generate 849 trips in the morning, 2,042 in the weekday afternoon, and 2,904 on Saturday. So by comparison, if we compare that last row to the counts from 2007, as you can see, as shown in yellow, even with the added development, the site is still generating less traffic than the overall mall property did in 2007. Dan, you want to go to the next slide? So as part of our preliminary traffic study, we have evaluated each of the site access intersections serving the mall, as well as two off-site intersections, those being Germantown Pike and Plymouth Road, and Germantown Pike and Hickory Road. In yellow, it shows the weekday morning peak hour conditions. In green, it's the weekday afternoon peak hour conditions. And in blue are the Saturday midday peak hour conditions. The first set of three colors shows the increase in delay at each intersection with the added apartment traffic. The second set of the colors shows the percent increase in site traffic with the added traffic from the apartment development. So looking at the first sets of colors, AM, PM, Saturday, delay increase, as you can see, the delay increase with the added traffic from the apartments, it's 7 seconds or less at any intersection. And for the most part, the delay increase with the apartment traffic is actually 2 seconds or less. In terms of increase in traffic numbers, the added traffic from the apartments represents anywhere from a 1% to 3% increase in traffic. So by all measures, whether it be changes in delay or added traffic volumes, this proposed development does not result in an appreciable or even noticeable impact on traffic conditions at the study intersections. Next slide, Dan, and this will be my last slide. So just to wrap up, so a couple of things I wanted to touch upon. Where do we go from here? So we will be submitting the traffic study to the township, and we will continue to work with township staff for review of the apartment traffic matters. Also, based on a Zoom meeting that was held last week, we know that on-site circulation within the mall property is an issue, and it is a concern of the township. And we, working with Preet, will be working with township staff and the township engineer regarding on-site circulation. So that is definitely an open item that we've agreed to take a closer look at to determine what can be done to further improve on-site circulation. Just some two key takeaways that I would offer based on the work that's been done thus far. Apartments, absolutely, it's a positive in the sense that it adds to the mix of diverse land uses on the site. It promotes traffic internalization within the mall. In turn, this will help the mall to thrive, and it would lessen the traffic impact as opposed to a pure retail development. There is a real concept, the real synergy, that a term that's been used already, with the mix of uses and the internalization, and that's a good thing from a traffic perspective. And then lastly, I'll just say the numbers show it, the percentages and the delay changes show it, but the added traffic from the apartments will not appreciably impact traffic conditions at the site driveways and at the surrounding study intersections. And Dan, that's all I had for, at this point.
Hey, Dan, you're muted. Dan, you're muted.
Dan, you're on mute.
Success? Can anybody hear me? I think I'm no longer on mute. Okay.
I can hear you, Dan.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that, guys. So there are two more concerns that have been raised with us, and again, we're just trying to get out in front of some of the things that have been raised with us from an early stage in the process, and that I know are things that people have been talking about. One is school children. I know that this is an incredibly common concern with multifamily developments. The thought is always that you end up with a new apartment building and you end up with a lot more school children moving into the district, and it has a pretty heavy weight on schools. That's really just not the case with Hanover developments, and we want to just give you some data from some of our comparable mid-rise properties that shows that you end up at our properties with a number of school children on average that equates to about 3% of the number of units. And so in the case of Plymouth Meeting and this project in particular, you'd end up with 11 or 12 potentially school children. And again, you'd have that $840,000 annual contribution in tax revenues to the school system. I think one of the major reasons that our projects differ is because, frankly, they're higher end, they're somewhat more luxurious, and you end up with less in the way, and also because of our unit sizes, we have less 3-bedroom units, we tend to do more 1s and 2s, and so the combination of higher rents, unit types, et cetera, results in an environment that frankly just welcomes less young families with numerous school-age children. The last thing I wanted to talk about briefly is just the size of the project. I think, I apologize for my Google Earth skills. I know some people probably could have done a better job with this, but I think Plymouth Meeting is nice in that it clearly has a core downtown area where you can see office and hotel uses. And as you just look at it, what you see is there aren't a ton of 9 and 10-story buildings in this downtown area. There are many 4, 5, and 6-story buildings, and there are a couple of 8, 9, and 10-story buildings, including one on the mall site in general. We just took a very quick look at what it would look like if you use the by right office density on this parcel, because really the big question here is putting residential on a parcel where residential isn't a by right use. If you did by right office density on this parcel, you could build a 120-foot building with roughly a 93,500 square foot footprint. And so you'd end up with, call it a 900,000 to 1 million square foot office building, something along those lines. So contextually, you know, what we've got planned is a roughly 400,000 foot residential building. We think this is one of the great places in the township to do it. We think that it's in the corner of 2 intersections. The site is slightly sunken, so really, if anything, it's going to feel from the Whole Foods parking lot like a 3 or 4-story building, which, I mean, Plymouth Meeting is actually a 4-story development. So I mean, it's something very much along the lines of what the township has approved. And the biggest difference is that we want to structure the parking and provide this sort of mid-rise, higher-end luxury product in the township, which we think will have a very symbiotic relationship with the mall. With that, I'm sure there are probably questions. Happy to open it up to both us and/or Preet if folks would like to discuss.
Can I ask just one quick question, kind of, I guess, about Hanover in general? You said you're basically in almost every city or most major cities throughout the country. When you develop these properties, do you tend to hold on to them, or do you often or ever sell your properties to other companies that may change the vision of them?
Yeah, frankly, it is a little bit of a mix. It really depends. So because of the nature of the property that we build, you end up with a very specific subset of equity groups that are interested in working with us. And those equity groups usually want to pick from one of a couple of strategies. It's not uncommon for our original equity partner to actually go long on the project and to keep the original ownership group intact, basically longer term. Very, very occasionally, Hanover will buy out our equity partner. I would say that that's somewhat unusual. And then sometimes we sell to a very small subset of the institutional equity groups out there who all work with high quality institutional asset managers. And the reason it's a fairly narrow group is because the nature of the high-end product type that we provide is really something that's desired by a fairly limited subset of the market. So it's a little bit of a mix.
How many stories will this building be?
The building will be 5 stories, and it will be roughly 390 units. And we've started the conversation with some members of the township, but it's really a magic number, roughly that 375 to 400 unit range in terms of attracting the right type of higher end equity, in terms of having enough building to build out the right size amenity platform, the right size courtyards, all at economies of scale that make sense and end up resulting in this type of higher end product, which is what we think would be really most appropriate here and what Hanover, as a general matter, is most suited to build.
Chris, Dan Herman from Preet. I just wanted to add another comment. When you had asked Dan about the operational long-term aspect of this proposed project. One thing I think it's important to understand from Preet's perspective is whatever is done on the property, whether we own 100% of it, a piece of it, or none of it, we're extremely concerned, short-term and long-term, of where it's placed, how it's placed, and how it continues to function and operate into the future. And therefore, we will have documents that will protect us and our assets so as not to put the core of our holdings at risk, to find ourselves waking up one day and looking and saying, what did we do and how did we get ourselves here? And so there are documents that we put in place to give us that comfort, which would hopefully provide the township the same comfort level as well going forward.
So just by way of example, our second phase at King of Prussia, we're going long on, and we anticipate that we'll end up holding our Hanover Exton Square development for quite some time. So that's just a couple of examples from within the local market, but completely agree with what Dan Herman said. The goal is to create a symbiotic relationship that can be maintained over a long period of time. And because we work proactively with our sellers and neighborhoods and townships to create the right context, often the original equity partner that we work with wants to go long. And so the ownership structure just basically doesn't change. Other questions?
I would just add one more thing, and kind of for me, I guess like a final thought here. And if anybody else from council wants to jump in or add on, feel free. I think that as a township, we look at this as obviously the mall property in general is a staple in this township. I mean, it's been something that's the Plymouth Meeting Mall, if you will, is identifiable with Plymouth Township and has been for a long time. The location of that property right off the turnpike and the mid-county intersection is, I mean, that property is the crossroads of southeastern Pennsylvania. So, for us, it's obviously very important. I feel personally that when we make a decision here as to what we want to do or what we don't want to do, I mean, this is a major, major decision for us. And for the township, I mean, it's an opportunity to potentially really re-envision a piece of our township to make it something modern and something that works and something that, fits with how people live and, what places like this look like now. I mean, that's, following obviously a lot of good examples around the country. At the same time, like we could make a decision that we regret and we could never reverse. So I think just so everybody understands from our perspective, the magnitude of what our decision-making process is here, on both ends, on the having the vision for what malls are really now and what that property can be, and the mixed use concept, which is, popular. Kind of one of those things where it goes back to people now want to live where they can walk and where they can, shop and do everything, almost like a downtown. We have a chance to do something like that. However, if it's not done correctly, we may regret doing it for a generation. So that's where I'm coming from. I think that's where a lot of residents probably see it. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of feedback probably in both ways from people who live in our community.
I have a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we would really welcome the opportunity to work collaboratively with the township. We understand the importance of the real estate, and we understand the concerns, and we're excited to have the conversation with you and help you grow comfortable with Hanover as a company. With that, we've got nothing to hide. We would love to have some of the members or all of the members of the council visit some of our projects in King of Prussia and or in Philadelphia, if that's helpful. And we'd love for you to see what we actually build and understand it so that you can get comfortable with Hanover being the developer to build in this key location. So if that's something that's helpful, granted, it's odd times to be extending tour invitations, but we can figure out a safe way in which to make that happen so that everyone is comfortable and can see what Hanover does. Sorry to interject. I think somebody else wanted to ask a question.
Yes, are the slides that you showed us going to be made available to us so we can study them? I mean, in other words, is it a PowerPoint presentation that can be made available?
So I defer to Denise on that.
Well, this is Mark. I represent Preet, and I see absolutely no reason why the materials that we have prepared would not be made available. So, Dan, I would like you to make those available so that everybody in the township can see it. And I would like to, Chris, I'd like to make this comment. Preet is exactly where the township is. The introduction of apartments and any other uses to the mall in an untraditional manner is as important to Preet as it is to the township. I think there is a coalescence of interests there. The township wants this to be a viable, vibrant, important part of the township on the long haul. And that's the only way that Preet will survive and the mall will survive. I understand your concern about the issue of whether or not an apartment project is an integral part of that. I totally agree, and I agree with Dan that it is. There are a number of issues that Dan presented in his presentation: parking ratios, sewer EDUs, amount of traffic, capture in the mall of traffic so that the traffic presentation may show more or less traffic. We want to be a part of that, and we want to share that, and we want to discuss all of those things with the township as the owner of this large property. And we are totally in agreement with the questions that were raised in our Zoom meeting earlier last week, with regard to circulation, integration. What's going to happen with the center of the mall? How do we deal with the office building that's there? I appreciate Dan's excitement and interest in putting a first-class product here, because that's what Hanover does. I just want to make the one point to council that that is only one aspect of what Preet is concerned about. So, thank you.
I just wanted to quickly add that we'll take a look at the packet of information that we had up on the screen and make sure that it makes sense in a format when we give it to you. So we'll take a little bit of time to put that together, and then we'll get something to Karen, and then she can give it out to whomever is asking to see it.
So we will definitely provide materials to the township, and we'll do that quickly. Before I close out, it's early stages for us, but we have invested a lot of time in the project so far. Do any of the members of the council want to express some initial opinions or thoughts, or something that might be helpful as we're thinking about the viability of this going forward?
I've got a couple comments if I can. Last time we heard this basic same presentation, it was around 400 units also. And I brought up the issue of traffic. And I still find it hard to believe that 74 peak trips are all that's going to be generated out of 391 units, but that's beside the point. I've lived in the township 40 years going to that mall. And during rush hour, whether it's in the morning or the afternoon, mostly in the afternoon for me, you sit in traffic to try and go eastbound on Germantown Pike. There's only one exit to go eastbound. Either you have to go up the Hickory Road, or God, when Butler Pike was open, you could use that and come back again. But for me, 391 units, there still hasn't been any explanation of added traffic. I guess there was an attempt to tonight, but that convinces me that that's a good number for the mall. I like the project. I recognize that it's a valuable piece of land. I want to see it develop there with something that's smart, but also that doesn't impact the community in the way that I think it will. That's all I have.
So on that point, what we'd like to do, and we've been working with our traffic engineer and Preet, it is a complicated property to understand, on both a traffic study and a parking study. And we hope to make those available to the township in the near future. And frankly, we were really just waiting on having this meeting and getting some initial feedback to finalize those documents. So we'll be in a position to provide those fairly shortly. And you can see everything that is included in them. And we look forward to discussing the reports and the assumptions in the near future. Any other comments from other members of the council or anything else from Mr. Gannon? We'd love more feedback.
Yeah, this is Marty Higgins. in your traffic study, you started with 2007. And obviously since 2007, a lot of development has occurred around the mall, park apartments. Like what Dave said, since 2007, the amount of traffic getting on and off for the Blue Route and the Turnpike has increased dramatically. So I'm concerned about the comparison to 2007, and the trips in and out of the mall is one thing, but getting into the mall and getting out of the mall, I think, is a bigger issue just because of the amount of traffic that'll be on Germantown Pike to get in and out already. So that's my concern with the traffic study. And maybe if you compared it to what it is now, what it would be helpful for me. The study used 2007, used 2020.
That makes complete sense. So let us discuss that internally and figure out how to get you that data.
Yeah, Dan, can I jump in real quick?
Sure. We may be running over time here, but if you want to just take a quick minute.
Well, no, all I was going to say is the comparison to 2007 was just for historical context, but the traffic study as prepared and the results presented are based on 2020, today's traffic. So that is, the numbers presented are based on today's traffic. To specifically to your point, we provided the 2007 comparison just for comparison of the mall traffic, but the analysis of the surrounding study area is based on today's traffic. But we can get into more detail as we progress through the process.
Guys, we've probably taken more of the council's time than was allotted to us. We apologize for that. We really appreciate you taking time on a Monday evening to speak with us, hear from us, and consider the concept that we're putting in front of the town. We really look forward to having the conversation. We think there's a really exciting project here. We think it'll benefit the mall. We think it will be good for the township. And we think that this is a lucky situation in which we can improve a lot of different things. Hanover's a great organization. I love working for it. I'd love for you guys to get to know our organization better. I think we can do that by showing you our product and giving you more insight into how we do things as a company. And I look forward to having that conversation over the coming weeks and months. We'll have to figure out a new way to do it since I've never done it really in the middle of the pandemic, but we'll find a way to do it. And we're looking forward to it. Unless there are any other questions, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to speaking with you more on the development soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for answering our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next one we have another presentation is the former Dawson's restaurant property, and I believe Mr. Tornetta is here. Is that?
Yeah, Jay or Keith?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. It took me 3 months to figure out how to do a Zoom meeting. So with everybody's permission, I just want to run through, you're all familiar with the old Dawson's at the interchange, which we developed maybe 20 years or so ago. As everyone knows, it's been vacant for approximately 2 years. The restaurants that have been in the area have migrated toward the mall, contrary to maybe what we heard earlier today. But most of the new restaurants are opening around the mall. So we've been out trying to market the piece of real estate and have been unsuccessful acquiring another restaurant user. Coincidentally, one of the issues with the piece of real estate also is there's multiple foundations. If anybody has been in maybe Dawson's over the last 10 years, there's multiple foundations between the bar and the restaurant area, which causes an issue for conversion. So we wanted to come to the board tonight and respectfully request that we have talked to a number of different opportunities over the last 2 years, and it appears that what may end up happening is a demolition of the building. So we wanted to understand timing-wise, because of the tenants' requests over those years, whether it would be appropriate to ask council tonight whether or not we could look forward to potentially getting a waiver of land development if we were to demo the building, which is approximately 6,500 square feet, and create another 6,500-foot building in its place. And what we could do is potentially expedite the time, because the tenants all want to know what would be the process or the logistics to be replacing the building because of the double foundation and the deterioration of the building. So currently it's about 6,500 square feet, 128 parking spaces. The impervious coverage wouldn't change, and I'll defer to Lonnie, but we would be disturbing less than an acre, which should take the Montgomery County Soils Conservation District issues basically out. So it would be maybe knocking the building down and replacing it with another building.
Yes, that would not require an NPDES permit for that activity, correct?
Jay, would it be another restaurant or some other building?
You know, Karen, we've tried really hard for a restaurant over the last couple years, and you see, you know, the mall got Miller's, the mall is getting Shake Shack, the mall's getting all these different ones. So what is really happening is in the periphery of that mall area, believe it or not, there are retail users and retail interest in going to the mall. So we've lost the opportunity with all of those folks, because they'll come look at Plymouth Road and then they end up going to the mall. So we're looking at a situation where trying to adapt now this restaurant to a different use would be difficult to do, especially because of the two-tiered foundations that we have on this site. So what we would like to do is, and we think about it internally, if council could see its way through to say, hey, there could be a waiver of land development here. Look, we still have to submit plans. We still have to do everything appropriate for the engineer to look at, the building folks to look at and all. But then we can contemplate, do we be proactive and knock the building down so the next tenant can envision, hey, here's a compacted pad. Here's what we can do here. We know that we can go through the process in a little bit more timely fashion than it would be as if we'd have to start from square one, go to land development, so on and so forth, because theoretically the impervious coverage won't change. Nothing should change at all, except we're taking that building out and replacing it with another building.
I don't think you would need a waiver to demolish building.
Well, I understand that, but I think the process is what happens after that. So again, we understand that if we were to submit plans, the township's going to be approving the plans. But if we had to go through the land development on top of that for 6,500, knocking that building down and putting that size building in, I think it changes the whole dynamic. It changes the cost. And then we have this issue tenancy-wise whether they would even come here. Believe me, we've run the ground ball out on this site for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so it would be just an open pad site, possibly for retail, possibly for restaurant, possibly for office, whatever.
Right. You know, we still understand we have to meet the code, the interchange code, as we all wrote a long time ago, way back when. But I think this helps give the tenant some anxiety relief that they can do what they think they can do there. And then the timeline to get there, which I would assume they all want to try to do sooner than later, if we're fortunate enough to acquire a tenant.
What does waiver of land development mean?
Well, I'll let the engineer answer that one.
Waiver of land development process is different from land development in that the applicant submits plans to the engineer, the landscape architect, and other consultants to be reviewed. It does not go to the county to be reviewed. It's more of an internal township review process. Mike, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you said it accurately, Lonnie. It's a much faster and expedited process. It's kind of a misnomer where you're saying it's a waiver of land development. You're still doing some of the things and submitting some of the documents that you would normally under a land development but it's not as involved of a process. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you might have reached out to us several months back on this, and I think we looked at it with Karen and with Tim Woodrow, and I'm not sure if this need would be required to go through land development. So you might not even need to do that.
And Mr. Clark, I did reach out. I guess it was right before the pandemic happened, very frankly. And I know you were trying to poll internally, and we want to be respectful to the board here to say, hey, look, we're transparent. Here's what's been going on. Everybody drives by it every day. We're trying. And now we're trying to think outside the box to say, look, maybe it's more attractive to a potential user if we demo the building, come out of pocket for the cost. There's a compacted pad. If they realize they have a building that fits within that pad, then they can move forward, understanding they still have to put plans before the township, so on and so forth, but they now know what their schedule is. And we believe that nothing actually will change except for the township now reviewing building plans for a new 6,500 square foot building. You know, it's a very unique property, folks, because way back when we developed this, I'm trying to look at all the different pictures and see who was around back then. But Karen, you were around, Lonnie, you were around. But actually what happened is, this is interesting because right now it's a small building. It's only 6,500 feet, but we have 125 dedicated parking spaces to this building. So again, you know, that creates, you know, I'm gonna say angst for my group who owns the building, but you know, we have a way over parked building for 6,500, but we understand that's where we are. So we're looking at this situation saying, we're not asking to increase any impervious coverage. Stormwater's the same, everything's the same, but maybe we should just be knocking this building down and trying to propose some other type of building on that location that stays within all the zoning code issues and building code issues. And we have some flexibility because right now we're parking this thing at, you know, 18 spaces per 1,000 or whatever it is, 20 spaces per 1,000, which is incredible.
Yeah, so since this already went through land development, I'm not, Lonnie, maybe you know if any of the stormwater regs have changed, but I'm not familiar with any problems out there regarding stormwater. I wonder if it couldn't be a building permit to demolish and then another building permit to construct.
And that's what we're respectfully asking the board, but we wanted to sit and chat with everybody because if anybody had a question or anxiety about it, we figured we should just chat with you.
Right, because
yeah, Karen, I think it would be a demo permit, a building permit, and then a construction improvement permit also that would show any changes of grades that would happen around the building that's being demolished. There may be some milling of the parking lot that Jay has to do to fit that stuff in there. So that would all be on that plan.
Right. To me, that's what I think it could be. They went through land development. They took care of stormwater, you know, complied with all the codes at the time, you know. Doesn't seem like that long ago, Jay.
I think it was 20 years ago. I had a full head of hair.
So did I, Jay.
Okay, all right, there you go. And this wasn't gray.
And again, as we were discussing this, Karen, Tim, and I back in, and Mr. Tornett is right, we were discussing this back at the end of February, or middle to the end of February, and that's obviously where it got a little lost. Tim says, as long as we have a detailed site plan, so you, Lonnie, and him can take a look at any stormwater issues, they can confirm all the zoning through the building permit application. So yeah, it's Tim is the one who suggested the waiver of land development, but it would seem to be an appropriate way to proceed on this. There's no zoning. It's a by right use. It's previously been approved. You know, they're not making any, as long as you're not making any significant changes to the footprint, to the parking circulation, anything along those lines, it shouldn't really require full-blown land development.
We're very thankful, and what we'll do is I'm going to talk internally with my cousins, my group, they're my partners, and we will decide whether we're going to be proactive in the demo, and if we are, we'll let everybody know, we'll come in and pull the permit appropriately, or we'll at least be able to talk to our prospective tenants and tell them, hey, here's what the logistics are if we're moving forward, and here's the timing, and here's how we can get there. Good?
Does that sound good for council?
Very appreciative, everybody. Stay safe, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Good night.
Okay, next item is just an announcement that there will be a public hearing and meeting next Monday at 6:00 p.m. regarding the Powell property at 2622 Butler Pike. I'll just briefly read the notice for that. Notice is given the Plymouth Township Council will hold a public hearing and a public meeting on Monday, June 8th, 2020 at 6:00 p.m. on the following matter: an application for a cluster development overlay approval. The property is the Tannybrook Farm at 2622 Butler Pike, Plymouth Meeting, PA. That is Montgomery County tax parcel 49-00-01219-00-1. The applicant is Dennis and Elizabeth Powell. Again, that's next Monday. Any questions, comments on that? All right, we have a public, 20 years of service resolution for Michael Frank. Who would like to take
Mike
that?
would like to receive that virtually, so.
I wouldn't mind doing it. I've known Mike for more than 20 years. So he coached my son in Little League.
All right. Marty, it is. And then we will go to, where are we at here? Administration, department, budget reductions.
Yeah, so last month, council asked that each department look at their current 2020 budget to see where they may be able to cut some projects out or save some money, as we're going to be facing some budget shortfalls this year. And I guess, so you can see there by department and by some of the projects, what each department had came up with. We think that we could save $1.1 million if we just defer a number of projects. So that's positive. And the fact that the community center has been closed, so you see really the largest savings there. But I guess that kind of sort of dovetails into the next topic, which is what Tim wants to give you an update on the budget. If are there any questions on that, department by department listing?
I think it's very much appreciated. I know decisions are not easy, and we had a lot of goals obviously for this year, but we'll appreciate the continued cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Sure.
The next item on the agenda, I'd given council a 4-page memo regarding the financial effects of the pandemic. It's my intention to try to update this every month. Situation changes each month. The memo you're looking at is pretty much the same as I gave you last month. I've updated some information. I tried to highlight the updated information in blue. There's still a lot of things up in the air. I don't think we're really going to have a good picture till the end of August. The BP tax is due July 15th. We won't get the second quarter EIT tax until the end of August. So right now, it's a lot of numbers are up in the air. I guess we're just making our best estimate possible. So I'll just go through this memo, and I'll just kind of give you the information that's kind of been updated. On page 1, on the business privilege tax, I've increased the estimate, the loss, a little bit to 10%. Watching the business privilege come in, it's coming in slower than I thought it would. So the number highlighted in blue, it's increased from last month. We're expecting a 10% drop off in the business privilege tax and mercantile tax, which would add up to a revenue loss of about $757,000. The next item would be the earned income tax. The first quarter earned income tax is done. It's all in. There has been no significant drop off in the first quarter. The first quarter, obviously, January, February, March, the pandemic didn't hit till near the end of March. So for the first quarter earned income tax, does not seem to be any drop off, at least in the first quarter. There's going to be a substantial hit in the second quarter, but a little bit of good news. There's really been no drop off in the earned income tax in the first quarter. The same can be said of the local services tax. The first quarter is all in. There's been no substantial drop off. Basically, the revenues are as budgeted. So for the first quarter local services tax, there's been no really effect yet. Again, there'll be a substantial drop off in the second quarter. The next item will be real estate taxes. Right now, I'm not anticipating any drop off in real estate taxes. I might be a little optimistic. The deadline for real estate taxes was today for the discount. Most of the money comes in on a discount. We're still adding up the receipts, but right now we haven't anticipated any loss of revenue. But if you can see in the blue area, we talked about it last month. There was a large commercial property we didn't think would pay. Actually, that large commercial property did pay, but then stopped payment on the check for $171,000. We've tried to contact them to see if they're going to replace that check or pay in the future, but we don't know. They did not respond. So that's a potential negative impact on the real estate taxes. The next item would be the community center revenue. We've updated that number. I think last month we thought the loss of revenue at the community center due to the pandemic would be about $250,000. We've had another month to look at it. The drop off in revenue has been more than that. I've updated the anticipated loss in the community center revenue to $450,000 related to the pandemic. And we're going to look at that number. It could be worse. It could be better. But right now, when it reopens, that number could change. But right now, it's looking at $450,000. The next item would be pensions. Since the last memo, we've got another monthly report. We've got the April 30th report in. The value of the pension fund assets are $70,934,000. This is actually better than was last month. I think last month we were anticipating a loss of in excess of 10%. Right now, the loss based on the April report is 6.8%. The stock market has come back. So the loss to the pension fund due to the pandemic, we're estimating right now about 6.8% as compared to last year's closing balances. On page 3, the schedule I have in the middle of the page, it's pretty much the schedule you saw last month. There's been a new line added, the expected departmental cuts and unused expenditure categories. So there would be an anticipated, based on what Karen told you, the departmental cuts and other savings we think we can make. We think we'll save about $1 million off the expenditure budget. So that's a positive item. And again, just to scroll down at the top, we started the year anticipating a budget surplus of $560,000. And you see the $1 million in potential cuts. And then these are the numbers that I had previously talked about: the potential loss of business privilege and Merck of $757,000, a potential loss of earned income tax of $759,000, potential loss of local services tax of $119,000, and a community center loss I just spoke of $450,000. So what we're looking at right now potentially is a loss of $525,000 during the year 2020. Compared to where we started, anticipating the surplus, it looks like the hit so far, as best we can tell, would be about $1 million. Again, this number is going to change. I think that might be the 525 at best case scenario. We'll have a better idea by the end of August as exactly what we're looking at. The next item, I'm going to report the cash balances as of May 27th. The general fund cash balance was 10.9 million. Capital reserve fund balance is 3.7 million. So we have sufficient and ample cash balances in both the general fund and the capital fund. And I just want to repeat again the collection cycle for the general fund. The last page is a graph. I think I just like everybody to understand this as we go through the cycle. On the far right, we hit the bottom for our cash cycle in March. We actually, at the bottom of the cycle, we had $8 million in general fund cash. So that's the bottom of the cycle. We're going into the pandemic, pretty well off. We have an $8 million cushion. Not quite sure, what the peak's going to be or what the next valley in the cash cycle would be. But as far as the pandemic goes, we're getting off to a good start, and basically we have money to kind of weather a lot of what may happen.
Tim, can I just jump in here real quick and ask you, do you know, like after the 2008 financial crisis, do you know like how low we went there on that low end of that cycle?
The lowest we got was about $3 million at the very bottom of the 2008, 2009, 2010 recession. We hit bottom in the general fund at about $3 million.
Thank you.
That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know if anybody has any questions, or that's kind of what we're seeing right now.
Tim, I have a question. Is it fair to say that next year could be even worse than this year?
It's fair to say, Marty, because the taxes a business are going to pay next year are going to be based on this year's income. So business privilege could be worse next year or similar. Next year isn't really going to shape up to be a good year either. It's probably going to be at least a two-year hit to the township's finances.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Thanks again, Tim, for putting that together. It's very easy to follow, and I think it does a really nice job of breaking everything down. Much appreciated. Any other questions for Tim? Tim, anything else to add?
That's pretty much it. I'll try to give you an update next month as the numbers come in.
Thank you. Next item is a tax appeal stipulation to settle.
I guess that would go to Mike.
All right. Any questions on that? All right, Police and Public Safety, Chief.
John, you don't have anything at this time, do you? Is he on mute?
Oh, yeah, I can't hear.
I don't believe he has anything. We went over things today. So I think he's good for now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Public Works and Sewer, Highway Permit Fee Resolution.
Yes, the highway permit fees haven't been changed since 2005, and it's in due time. We're not going to do anything with the sidewalks with certificate of adequacy, but just for the utility companies, in particular, the trenches have been, sometimes they can get within 100 linear feet, and they're only paying $50 for a trench. This is more in line with what other municipalities are doing. It doesn't change anything with in terms of paving half a road if they go beyond 100 linear feet or anything else as far as that goes. But it's been a long time, and it's time for a change.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? All right, is that, who
Yeah,
wants to take that? Do we have to vote on that next week, or we do that now? Next week, I guess, right?
Next week, you would assign that to somebody for next week.
Anybody want it? Takers. All right.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
I'll take it.
Hey, Kathy. Kathy, I was going to give it to you.
Kathy, it is.
Anybody gives me a hard time, I've got a weapon. No, I'm kidding.
Next is the Department of Transportation Winter Services Agreement and Resolution.
You want that one, Chris, or not? So this actually literally is the third time you're seeing this, but PennDOT had some confusion and some incorrect numbers in the lane miles that Chris went over very carefully with the woman at PennDOT. And so they're really going to ask us to do another resolution with these numbers for the third time, but this third time's a charm, so.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, did we already pass a different version of this? Is that?
Two others, yes. You
Sure.
did it in February, you did it in April, and she came back and told us there was still a problem. So, so Chris took the time to go through everyone with her, and we are pretty confident that everything is right this time. And they insisted that we do another resolution, even though we've done two already.
Got it.
So, but yeah, so this is, someone could take this too.
Who read this one last time? Is that you, Dave? Dave, since you're so familiar with the verbiage and the language, we'll give you that one again.
I think I misremember. No problem.
Anything else for Public Works?
No, just that the paving was complete, and once again, Glasgow did a phenomenal job. And believe it or not, I didn't get one phone call. So very good, another great job by them, and as they always do. So very pleased.
Very good, very good.
And under budget.
Awesome, thank you. Engineering, Fulton Street parking.
I guess I'll take this one. Karen?
Yes, you may, you and or Chris.
Yeah, Lonnie, I can take it. I'm pretty
very familiar. Yeah.
Chris, did you get Tim's memo today?
I did not, no.
Okay, go ahead. Will you make the presentation and then I'll comment later?
Yeah, we were out there, and I was out there with Ferd D'Onofrio, and you know, looking at a couple things. I think we can gain about 16 parking spaces in that area. However, 8 parking spaces will be lost because they do parallel park there now. So, you know, the net is only going to be about 8 parking spaces. So we might be able to put 16 in, but we're going to lose 8. So we're only going to gain 8. And the other issue is that there is a lot of rock in that hill. And so a rock clause would probably have to be, you know, that number might jump. Karen, do you remember what that number was originally? What they thought, $100,000?
Yeah, Tim's thinking it could be that or more now, because of the rock. And yes,
Yeah,
that's what
okay.
he could be over $100,000 now. We were hoping it would be a lot less than that initially. But I was going to say, and I think I did send this around to council this afternoon, Tim's memo. Did anybody see that?
I
saw that.
Yeah. So Lonnie, you could pick it up from there, but he did, we probably could do this for gain maybe 5 spots for a lot less money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the discovery of the rock outcropping, it appears that would push the budget to over $100,000 for this project, which would gain us 8 total net gain of 8 parking spaces. So Tim looked at possibly an alternative would be to gain a net of 5 parking spaces by getting 3 spaces in the Bobby Higgins portion, and then 2 across the street towards the pump station. You know, this could be done fairly inexpensively, certainly, you know, along the lines of the original cost estimate. So I guess that's pretty much where we're at now. Either an expanded project cost for the project, gaining 8 parking spaces, or investigating trying to fit 5 new parking spaces along Fulton Street, 2 closest to the pump station, and then 3 on the other side of the street.
You won't have to remove the large trees. You don't have to build a retaining wall. Don't have to replace the fence and additional trees on the adjacent property owners' property.
It'd probably be just a matter of excavation, paving, curb removal, and repair. So it'd be a very limited project.
Not even a curb on Bobby Haynes' side. There is no curb.
Yeah.
Right, and there it wouldn't have to go out to bid either. I'm sure we could probably be done under 20,000.
Yes.
Yeah, scrape up a little dirt and put down some stone and
So it's not, it's not the ultimate fix that Dave was looking for, but it's something.
And Lonnie, we also discussed that it couldn't be pull-in parking. It would have to be diagonal parking.
Yes.
Because there's only a 19-foot, it would actually be a little less than 19 feet because of the back end of the car. If we stay on our property and we went pulled straight in, we would probably have about 17 feet to back out before you hit the curb. So it would be diagonal parking would have been the way, and we would have lost some parking that way too. We might not even have gotten 18 parking spaces in or 16 parking spaces.
Question, the spots behind Bobby Haynes' property that he has been using or claiming his own, those 3 new ones there, do they include the 10 that he has? Or is that in addition to, or how would that work?
That would be
in addition to.
Yeah.
And those 10 are not his anymore, Dave. You know, they're in the township right away now.
That was my point. I was curious whether it'd be 13 there but that would have to be made clear to the residents that they're public now.
Yeah,
Correct.
and it would
Right,
be
well,
3 more there and 2 across the street.
well, I think in light of the stone that you found and, escalating costs here, I think any improvements we make down there would be appreciated. So I really don't mind if, we go this route to begin with, and let's see how that works out. And then if it's something, in the future, we have a windfall of money, want to spend it down there, let's talk about it then.
Right.
Great. Tim thought he would get together with Chris and Karen, and if you were, liking this new alignment, get together with Chris and Karen and go over what needs to be done. If plans have to be revised or property owners have to be notified and things like that. So Tim will probably call you tomorrow, Chris and Karen.
Okay. Very good.
Chris, I'll yield to Dave, but would you be, could I meet you down there at some point and just you could show me visually what all
Sure.
this looks like, just so I know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm available whenever.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
All right. And anything else for engineering, Mr. Manai?
No, that was it. Thank you very much.
Subdivision land development. We are at SMG Hotels, 201 Plymouth Road.
Okay, that's Marty's district.
Okay.
And Plymouth Square Shopping Center.
So that one would be Mike Clark, and Alex will need a resolution. Okay?
Yeah, we'll take care of that, Karen, and I'll get that over to you by the end of the week for your review.
Yeah, and did Linda, did she just send you over all the papers for the binders?
Yes, they're all in the packet that we got on Friday.
Okay, great. Okay, so you have what you need from Dave Pomeroy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there something new there? Something different?
No, Dave, when a land development is ready, or, for conditional approval, he prepares a memo that you have in your book. I wanted to make sure Alex had it because that's what he'll use for that project.
But nothing's changed on what they've been discussing, right?
No, nothing has changed. So the Brixmor is moving their offices down there at the Plymouth Square Shopping Center. I know some of their folks are still on the call, and I don't know if there's anything that they want to go through or if you want to hear. There are a number of waivers. Many of them could either be from existing conditions or could be typical waivers that are usually granted for things like within 200 feet of the site what we would call routine waivers. But I don't know if anybody wanted to go through any of them or not. But otherwise, it's a conditional approval for land development.
Gotcha.
And
Anybody-
Alex would always make up a resolution for next week for that, if you're okay with the memo from Dave Conroy.
Does anybody have any questions, concerns?
Can I just ask one dumb question?
No
Learning,
question.
still learning. Like I was reading some of the waivers, and I always wonder, like, why we just always grant some waivers? Like, why do we have the condition then? That, like, for the landscape islands, you know, the shrubbery that they're saying, like, we want a waiver that we don't have to put that in. That's such a eyesore of, like, just concrete and cars. Is there any reason why we cannot say that, no, we do want to have these amenities added if it's in our code? I don't quite understand why we always waive that.
You can say that, but I see Rob chomping at the bit here. Do you want to answer, Rob, or?
Well, okay, I'm glad to learn.
On the call.
No, and Kathy, I think your question is a valid one. The Brixmore Shopping Center, Plymouth Square Shopping Center, this is a redevelopment, and I had a big long presentation that I'm looking forward to actually doing with the Planning Commission. I won't take up more of your time tonight unless you want me to answer questions. You guys have had a very long night already. But generally speaking, this shopping center is certainly unique in the fact that we're redeveloping a shopping center that currently does not comply with the vast majority of Plymouth Township code requirements with respect to landscaping and so forth. What I think you'll see, and I hope Dave has pointed out in his memo to council, is that in nearly every respect, this project is actually improving upon those existing conditions. So while we can't necessarily meet every single code provision that exists today, we are improving upon those existing conditions. We are improving green space overall in the shopping center, decreasing impervious coverage, and ever so slightly actually improving our parking situation out on site. So I know that you see those waiver requests in a number of other land development situations that are ground up, and that's a different conversation. This is us trying to do everything we can to improve upon the existing situation. Here, there's a trade-off. Either we have to lose parking spaces to add more islands, and then we have to go and seek zoning relief to lose those parking spaces, or we can try and do the best we can. And so we have left it to Scott Quigley from Langen and his team, and Kim Flanders at McCluskey Faber to really just try and fit as much as they can in there, but also make sure that it survives in those islands. So we have definitely improved upon the existing condition.
Okay, that's a good explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, we've added so many more codes since the center was built back in the
Right, it's an old one.
An old one.
Next one is extension for the proving grounds.
Yeah, that's Dave.
All right, and then extension requests for Belvoir Road.
Both of these are Dave's.
It's always Dave. Dave.
Happy to do it.
So Belvoir Road and Lilburn Enterprises. All right, going down to, is there anything else for subdivision land development that's not on here?
No.
Code enforcement, vacant building ordinance, final consideration.
Yeah, so this has been advertised and it is ready. I guess, Mike, you usually read ordinances, right? And
I do.
And then it's ready for council's approval.
Questions, council? Anybody? All right, zoning hearings, any concerns here?
No, I don't have any concerns.
Any volunteers to read the zoning?
I'll read it.
Okay. I saw Karen's hand.
Yeah, I muted because my dog was whining.
All right, I'll defer to Karen.
Anything for Parks and Rec?
No, I don't think so. I think we're hopefully for July, we'll see the Park and Rec ordinance that we've been working on, but I don't think there's anything for here now.
Nothing for planning and development?
Chris, I wanted to add one thing under planning and development, something that I think is important for council to decide some point soon, sooner than later, is the township building renovations that we're talking about, and specifically the HVAC system. And in light of the Ready 100 resolution, just so council's aware, our architect is going to make like a cost benefit analysis and some kind of return, on investment or a payback on whichever type of heating and cooling we choose. But that, whether we bring natural gas to the building, which is a fossil fuel, or try for something else like a geothermal system, I think that decision needs to be made sooner than later, so that we can, keep this progressing. Just because we have to keep this whole thing going, because there's literally offices that are, struggling to keep the air conditioning on or the heat here. We just can't delay this anymore, but that decision needs to be made, and I think that's one that you guys have to make. But hopefully we'll have the financial information to go with that very shortly, so that you can make that decision. I just want to bring it to your attention that it's something that will need to be addressed as soon as we have that information.
Do you think we'll have it next month, Karen? Can we have it that soon?
I hope you'll have it sooner, Karen. I do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, planning?
No, not for me.
So citizen board, we still have 2 open on the property maintenance code appeals board, and we still have 1 position open on the historic architecture review board. I can read those, put myself to work. Anything else before we go to executive session?
No, not for me. Anybody else?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be
You
safe.
all.
Okay.
Oh, you too.
So we just called.